All right, I'm going to wait just a second. I know that you're going to need to log back in. We're going to try this again. Just know that I don't like being defeated. I have never gone live from my phone before, but we're going to see how this works. Live from my phone. I've got to watch for you to come back in. Okay, I can see you kind of sort of popping back in. This looks different on a phone. Y'all know I don't like to be defeated, and I love my community, so we're going to get this done this morning. I see you're popping back in. I think we were up to about 30 people, but you're popping back in. Okay, I see you more than half. Oh, yeah, most of you are back in now, so thank you. Thank you for popping over. I don't know what's going on in the church building today. Our internet is a little weaker, so we'll try it from my phone. Thank you, Sister Sandra. I'm glad to be back here. Thank you. Thank you all so much. All right, so now we were going to get into our printed text, which is verse 32. If you're catching this, if you're just starting back in, I did pray, go look at part 1. I'm not taking it down. You have to watch both of these together. So we're going to go into our printed text now, which talks about this multitude of people that believe. They were this group of radical believers. Let me also say that because I am trying something new here. Okay, yes, I can. Thank you. I didn't know how comments work. This is new for me. For those of you who ever get tripped up and you have to try new technology and you get a little nervous, hey, I have to try new things too sometimes. So this is what it looks like. Thank you for being patient. I can see your comments though. So this community of radical believers, this community that had come together, something that was new. There were lots of people. There were thousands of people. I thought this was interesting. If I asked all 40 of us, if I said right now, we're going to have breakfast delivered to every single one of your homes in the next hour, where would you want breakfast from? Just go ahead and tell me, where would you want breakfast from? We're going to deliver breakfast. Where would you want breakfast to be from? And my point is, it is hard to get groups of people on the same page. As you start to comment, you're going to see each one of us would say something totally different. Sister George wants McDonald's. I this morning had a blueberry scone and some coffee. Somebody else would want IHOP. We will want that. See, Sister Diana wants Hardee's. We all want something different. And as we look at, there we go. I knew somebody wanted IHOP. There, finally, we got 2 people who want IHOP. Sister Jennifer is going to let us stay on the budget and go to Denny's. I think we can spend like a good $4 and have at least the pancake and basic breakfast. All right. A Hanover pancake house. So lots of ideas. But that just shows us that as simple as a request may be, the idea that all of these people could get onto one page and be with one accord was a big deal. The idea, when we look at community, and I'm curious, we talked about communities that you are a part of. What made you choose the communities that you're a part of? What made you choose your church? What made you choose the group of friends that you hang out with? How did you choose these people? How did you choose the people that you are connected to? And as we look at this community always begins. I looked up when I was looking at research on how communities are formed, because I don't just read this and see, oh, there was a multitude of them that believe. No, it took people buying into who this organization was, who this church was. Yes, there was the message of Christ, but now to buy in, to be a part of this organization, how did they do that? A community begins when its mission and its members decide to collaborate towards a common purpose. There you are, Sister Liv. It is the same set of core values. So as we look at this group of radical believers, they fit the definition of a community. They fit the definition because there are thousands of people, these first Christians, who are aligned in their common values, their core beliefs, their common goals, Sister Brenda says. And here were their common goals. They were aligned. They had unity. Remember, the Spirit of the Lord fell when they were in one place and they were doing the same thing. When they get on the same page, God's love flows out of them in a way that cannot be contained. They are of one heart. They are of one soul, and they share their possessions. There is so much unity. I think this is important to know, that even as we look at our communities of faith. Like, we have to be so much more than people who come together on Sunday mornings or Saturdays or whenever your faith community comes together. We have got to be more than people who just come together for the schedule. We've got to be more than people who come together to be fashion statements. We've got to be more than people who come together because of even the sound. And trust me, I am from a Pentecostal tradition, and I love everything about my church. I love the sound. I love the music. I love the preached word. But I also know that there has to be more to it than just those things that happen inside of a service. And we see that in the Acts church, that there was more than just the church. There was more. The Spirit of the Lord in them was for more than shouting and dancing. It was even for more than the tongues of cloven fire that fell. The Spirit of the Lord in them empowered them to be unified in a way that spilled over and became a part of its aligned values of its community. And so they were one in the ways that they moved from the heart. They were one in the soul. That's what gave their church life. And then they were one in the fact that they had a decision made. As we look at the core values of our community, and I'm curious, in your churches or in communities that are important to you and your family, share with me a core value. What is one thing that you have decided is going to be customary of your community, customary of your house of worship? Thank you. Genuine love for one another. Absolutely. What is customary? And for the Acts church, the one thing they knew, if nothing else, everybody attached to us is going to be taken care of. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get all the Jordans and all the handbags, but what we're saying is we're not going to sit around and watch anybody around here be in need and not respond to what we see. We saw that in last week's lesson. John wrote, how can someone who has the resources, they have capability, see a need and not respond? How can the Spirit of the Lord be in you? And so that was alive here in the Acts church, that they would not sit around and see a need and not respond to it. Respect for one another and to do for one another. Thank you, Sister Brenda. Sister Diana says to be supportive, to love one another, no respect of person. Sister Diana says, I love these. And these are important core values as, again, we think about what it means to come together and collaborate toward a common goal in our community. Now, look at this church as well. That gives and trains children in the way of the Lord. I love that too, Sister Deborah. Now, this church was bold. Note again, that's why I gave you some background. If you look at, as soon as Peter and John came back, the first thing they did was they prayed. And they were bold. They were believers. We know that. We know from the previous verses in chapter 4 that these are believers, and they're spirit-filled. Verse 31, they're spirit-filled believers. So they're bold in the word. And now we see this aligned sense of purpose. They are bold in their actions. The Spirit of the Lord comes to make us bold in our action, our ability to show the love of the Spirit. Again, the Spirit came not just for the gift of the tongues, but it came to spill over into their everyday lives. So much of our witness as believers, it's not about the building that I'm sitting in now, but it's the love that flows out of you as you go out into the world. And so, yes, there's boldness, not timidity is not an option, Brother Kevin says. Absolutely. There's a boldness that we are to walk in. And communities depend on financial contributions of their members. This is true of communities. They depend on the financial contributions of their members. Financial contributions are not payment for service rendered or a reflection of the value that's received. Instead, it's a contribution to further the collective cause, to grow the community, and to share the fortune for everyone. That's just a description of what the world says a community is. And we see that operating here in this church, that the Acts church did not have a worldly perspective of what it meant to be in community. So what do I mean with the worldly perspective? The world is about amassing goods. The world is about what your personal balance sheet looks like or your personal net worth. And don't get me wrong, we work hard to be able to do the things that we want. But the world will sometimes be so focused on itself that it does not take into account the need and what is around it. That's what makes us as believers different. And so here is this church that's willing to look at this. The Spirit gave them confidence to be effective in the works of the ministry. Absolutely. Here was one of the issues. I told you already that as people were converted and as you had these other religious leaders who struggled with the conversation or the preaching of the resurrection, you had a lot of people who were employed in the temple. And the moment you became a believer, the moment you accepted the message of the resurrection was likely the day that you hit the unemployment line. And so there were people there who were begin to go without, and people in the community had to make sure that as you are now a part of this community of believers, we're not going to let you not be able to have your dinner. And so there was this flowing of unity, the flowing of love that spilled into their everyday lives. If we classify this church, it was a generous church. It was a generous church. I am curious, your church, wherever it may be, you're free to say the name of it if you're comfortable. And if you don't want to, that's okay. But we see that the Acts church had one heart, one soul, and they had shared possessions. What are 3 things that you would say about your community of faith? How would you describe the community of faith that you have chosen to be connected to? There are reasons why we choose the communities of faith that we are attached to. And so what are your 3 ways that you would describe your community of faith? And so being a member of this community meant being not separated. Being in community means an attachment. But in this case, it wasn't just being not separated, but there was a sufficiency. There was a commitment to the sufficiency for everyone inside. I love this because the community was strong. They had great power and great grace. Sister Sandra says teaching, it's a teaching church and it's word-based. I appreciate that. Absolutely. I love it. When they had their great power and great grace, what is it? What did that mean? Well, great power was the power with which the word was preached and taught. The Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church in Fayetteville, Meals on Wheels, committed to the elderly. Very nice. Thank you for that. One heart, love for each other, and faithful to our ministry. Thank you, Sister Jennifer. I love that. I love that. I love my church because we are word-centered. I love my church because it is a family environment, and I love the heart that we have for our community outside of the 4 walls. I love the fact that yesterday, and I'm trying not to be distracted because I'm facing the parking lot as a few people are arriving, but on this very parking lot yesterday, more than 200 families in this community received full Thanksgiving dinner boxes. So I love that. And I love, we talked about this in our class this morning, that it wasn't people out taking selfies saying, oh, look at what I did. That is just the heartbeat of this ministry, and I love it. So as we're looking at great power and great grace, the power of the word going forth. What is the power of the word? It's the same as it is today, that he is risen, he is alive, that Christ was born, that he lived, that he died, but most of all, he didn't stay where he was. He got up and he is gone to the Father. He is preparing a place for us. And guess what, y'all? I know we don't talk about it much anymore, but he is coming back again. And that is the power that we all have today as we share the love of Jesus Christ. We need to remind people that he is coming back again. And so the sacrifice of Christ was such a powerful message that thousands of people began to come. And then we see great grace in the church. What is great grace? Well, it was the grace, the unmerited favor that the church had received. But it's so interesting. This church, based on what they received, that is what they gave out. And they were known for that. We've got to be careful. So many of us have received grace, and sometimes people receive grace and then they become so wonderful that they forget that they were extended grace, and they turn into these judgmental people, and other people can't seem to find a space where they can win and be successful in the things of God. But when you have been shown grace, and grace was shown to you when you weren't perfect. So grace doesn't mean that we're perfect people. Being a church doesn't even mean that we're perfect people, but it means that we have God continually helping us. And all of us are in places of receiving continual doses of grace. We don't get it right all the time, but great power and great grace. When we look at this church again, here we see that nobody inside of the community lacked. There was total provision and continuous supply. I use that line all the time. Thank you, Pastor Kenneth Davis in Denton, Texas. Oh my goodness, I heard that, at least 20 years ago. And I believe that, like even now, I don't ask God to be rich. I've never prayed the prayer, oh God, make me super wealthy. I've asked God for total provision and continuous supply. That means at no point do I want to experience lack. It doesn't mean that I have to amass everything in the world, but to know that He is a God that provides and He gives us what we need. And so in this community, He's given them everything that they need. A people of great possibilities. In building a new community, the challenge is always to create a means for people to engage in a way that moves toward the possibilities of progress. So when a community is formed, typically there's sort of this pie in the sky idea of who you are and what you will be. But ultimately, it takes good leadership to bring everybody into a space where you are aligned with who we say we are and what we say we want to become. Thank you, Sister Deborah. The purpose must have a sense of urgency, which makes people more likely to step up. And can't you see that as a sense of urgency in this community? We don't want anyone to be lacking. And so members buy into that idea in the Acts Church. They buy into that, and it continues to be what is kept in front of them. It's what their leaders share. It's what they see modeled in front of them. They become this generous church again. When they see a need, they are love in action. Here's what we learned in verses 35 and 36, that when they see a need, they don't just sit there and say, oh, poor thing. Oh, my goodness. He doesn't know what he's going to eat Thursday. Absolutely not. Good morning, Sister Roll. When they see a need, they take action. Love will move you to action. When you have the capability to share with someone, when it's inside of your means, if the Spirit of the Lord be in you, you will not sit and watch someone go without. When they see a need, the text tells us that they respond by selling the land and the homes that they have to give. Now, let's be careful to note, it does not say that they sell their primary residence. They are selling out of the excess. There were some in the community who had excess and overflow. So based on that, they were selling what they had to share, and they were bringing that in. Whatever the sales price would be, they would bring that in and lay it at the feet of the apostles. Now, this was huge for me. You bring in money and you just tell your leader, whatever you do, I trust you with it. And that's different for us, right? Because as much as we think we trust leadership, we like to facilitate our funds. How do I know that? Well, because on our line, our envelopes at church, or Givelify, if you're using electronic giving right now, there are envelopes set up where you, on some level, are directing, I want my money to go to Sunday school. I want my money to go to the children's ministry. I want my money to go to the general fund. Notice that this is not a situation or a system where anyone is designating where their money goes. Yes, Sister Sanders, we dictate where our money goes. Not only do we dictate it, but please don't let pastor not have, and the trustee board or whomever not have the appropriate financial report in the December business meeting. Oh, how many churches have been turned upside down when we could not account line by line, penny by penny for what was going on. I think there are two things that I see here. There's, first of all, a trust that the people see in their leaders. First of all, we've got to give our leaders trust. If you have trusted this person to watch for your soul and to be an organization that you submit under its leadership, why do we need a financial accounting of every single penny and not trust that our leaders will send the money into the spaces that it needs to be? That's why most church envelopes say, we got it, we know where you want us to send the money, but if we need to spend it anywhere else, we're going to do that. But this is a different level of trust here in this church. But there's also a flip side to that. We give trust where trust has been earned. And so for me, when I look at the leadership in this community, these leaders have earned the trust of their people. They know that when the money is given, that the apostles are not going to fly in a private helicopter. The apostles are not going to come in and have the best outfit on. The apostles are not going to have a bigger house than everybody else. They know that it is for the common good. And please understand, I want to say again, Lady Way is not opposed to any leader who has nice things. I am opposed to leadership who has nice things on the backs of the people that they serve. So I wanted to be clear on that. And I come from a ministry family. My ministry family has always been bivocational. So my brother is a pastor today, and whatever his company puts into his account every other Friday at midnight, I believe is his to do as it relates to his local church that he leads, whatever they give to him as a pastoral gift or salary, but everything else is for the furtherance of that community, and that comes with trusting leadership and being leadership that is worthy of being followed. Let me move on because my time is short today. We see two examples now that we understand the framework of this community. There's one man who has the heart of the community, has the spirit of the community. He's Joseph. Some translations say Joseph. He's called the son of consolation or the son of encouragement. He's a Levite who has a piece of land in Cyprus. Now, it's important to note that he is a Levite. Technically, back in Deuteronomy, the Levites were not allowed to have land, but that was in Israel. So that's why we've got to see that this particular plot of land is in Cyprus. It's not in Israel. So we don't know how he got the land or whatever. But what we know is that he had extra that he could sell. He saw a need and he did it. Now we move into chapter 5. We see two different kinds of people in any community. The people make the difference. And when you're in community, you want to know that you are in community with like-minded, like-hearted, like-spirited people. But that is not what we see in the persons of Ananias and Sapphira. That's why chapter 5 begins with the word but. We have Joseph, who was like the community, but Ananias and Sapphira were different. They were not like the community. They saw that Joseph had made his transaction, that he had brought his gift to the apostles, and he was probably celebrated. And Ananias and Sapphira desiring to have that same thing. And that's such a watch out for us right now. We do some amazing work, but the question is always why? Do you do it out of the sincere space in your heart that wants to help, or do you do it to be seen and to be celebrated? I hate that social media has taken us to a place where everything has to be seen and celebrated. And that was the issue with Ananias, his desire to be seen and celebrated. I know folks will get to where he lied to God, and he did, but he did that. That was just his play. That was his action. His action, though, came out of a bad space of desire. And we've got to watch our motives and our desires. Sometimes desiring the wrong thing will push you into actions that are not consistent with the values of the community that you're a part of and not consistent with the word of God. And that's what's Ananias' issue. His desire to see and be seen pushed him to say to his wife, hey, you see what happened right there? We've got some land. Let's sell ours too. So they sell a piece of what they own. And the issue was that when they brought back whatever they were going to contribute, Ananias' name, I didn't tell you this, means God is gracious. Sapphira's name meant beautiful. But neither one of them behaved in a way that was beautiful or gracious. This was so interesting to me that they are a part of the community. Ananias and Sapphira are a part of the community. They are, yes, Sister Elise, what we do for God, what we do in private, God will reward openly. But they're a part of the community. They look like the community. They move with the community every day. They're among the community, and yet the community is not in them. They are not aligned with the heart space of that community. And so when they go and they sell this piece, Ananias comes and brings the portion to Peter and lays it at his feet. And Peter doesn't ask any questions. He's got a word of knowledge that says, you lied. This is not what you brought. This would be like him making, $30,000 on the sale of a property and only bringing 20,000 of it to the apostles. And he says, you lied. You kept back a part of the price. What was your motivation for lying? Why would you do that? It was your land. It was yours to live in, yours to sell, yours to keep. Nobody made you do anything. Like, that's an important piece to know. In this community, in the Acts church, all of this was voluntary. Nobody was making you do anything. Nobody was asking you to give and not be able to pay your light bill when you go home. And yeah, let me say that, because I know in many churches, I've seen some things where there are these lines and people that probably shouldn't be given in the $1,000 line, but they've been pressed and, they feel like they have to give. And if you trust God, some people have been led to do it. But there are a lot of people who have been given the light bill money. And that was never the requirement in the Acts church. But he's saying you never even had to do any of this. The issue is that you lied with what you brought. Even if you had sold for $30,000, and I made that number up just for the math's sake, even if you had sold and you said, listen, Peter, I can only give you 20, my wife and I need this other 10, but this is what I want to give, that would have been fine. But the issue is that you were a hypocrite. You came and performed like a stage actor as if you gave everything. And that was a lie, not to the people in this community, but you have lied to the Spirit of the Lord. You have lied to God. That was the issue, was that he was not honest before a holy God. So much correlation that we see here between Adam and Eve in the garden. They were in sort of this perfect place, this utopia, if you will, and they could not follow the rules. They were trying to manipulate, and the enemy got into them. That's what we see with Ananias and Sapphira. Why has Satan filled your heart, is what Peter asked. You were in this amazing community, this aligned community that operated in a oneness, and it wasn't good enough. You let the enemy get in your heart to bring about confusion. So much what we have to watch out for. The enemy is never satisfied, never happy, never excited when the community of believers is with one accord. It is the enemy's goal to divide the people of God. And so where there was unity, here comes the enemy into the heart of a man. He used somebody on the inside to bring confusion in a space where there was unity. And so because Ananias lied, the judgment was immediate. It was swift. The King James says he gave up the ghost. He dies immediately and he's carried out. The Jewish tradition was not to hold bodies out for 3 days like we do, or a week and wait on the family to come in and for us to get the fried chicken. No, he was buried immediately. Now notice that his wife is not present, but 3 hours later we learn that she does come, and Peter asked her the same question. Now, all these people have seen Ananias die, and here comes Sapphira, and it was to stop the progression of the kingdom of God from moving forward. Here's Sapphira. She has every opportunity to tell the truth. It was a moment, and we ask that there are times that you and I find ourselves in situations that are tough. The truth may be tough, but the truth is always the right thing to tell. The truth is always the best version of the story. And she had this moment. Is this the purchase price that you and Ananias got? Yeah, it is. And Peter says to her the same thing. Because you were not honest, you've lied as well. The same men who carried your husband out will carry you out as well. For both Ananias and Sapphira, there are 3 things we see with them. There are consequences. And yes, Sister Brenda, the truth makes you free. There are consequences. There's confrontation and conform behavior. The consequences are the immediate judgment of a holy God. I believe it's the Message Bible that says that God showed the people that he was not to be trifled with. And I mentioned this to teachers. If any of you are educate or teachers in the classroom space, kind of at the beginning of the year, you have to hold people's feet to the fire. And there may be that one day that something happens and they find out Miss So-and-so does not play. Doesn't mean that you all the time, but sometimes you need people to know we're not doing that around here. And that is what God has laid out. Sin can lead to death. Yes, J.J. Collier, God is not to be played with. And there was no question to anyone in this community. Verse 11 says that fear came upon not just the ones in the room who saw it, the entire church. Everybody heard about what happened, and it sent a loud and clear and convincing message that God is holy and that he was not to be trifled with. There's confrontation. Each one of them, Ananias and Sapphira, is confronted with their own sin. They're brought face to face with it with no opportunity to repent. And finally, behavior is conformed. We just talked about that with the community around seeing what happened. This was also interesting for me as well, that we are responsible for our own behavior, right? So Sapphira, even though she was a co-conspirator, part of a plan that probably her husband came up with, she died tragically. What started off as such a beautiful idea, a unified community where everyone had what they needed, ended tragically where people misunderstood the holiness of God. So we were all responsible for our own actions. Even if it was somebody else's bright idea, you and I are responsible for our actions. I am 5 minutes late into service. Let me close out. We must have a spirit-led attitude in giving. We must know that our communities are important. God blesses us through our communities, and I encourage you even this week, we've got a few days remaining before a holiday, but look in your community. Be committed to knowing that you don't want anyone to go without. God blesses us to be a blessing to other people. What we have is not ours for our balance sheet, but what we have is a gift. It all belongs to God. So my final statement is, don't let your possessions possess you. Think about how you can be guilty of sharing love and sharing in this season. Before I run in, I want to say happy Thanksgiving to every single one of you. As I think about the things that I am thankful for, I am so thankful for a community with you, a people of shared values and beliefs, and all of us desiring to be better and to grow in God. So I love you. I'm excited about you. I believe in the God purpose in you. And I'm praying that your family has a wonderful and please be safe Thanksgiving. Brother Kevin, thank you for blessing our class. I really appreciate you. If you don't have a place that you're worshiping, please join me in the Dominion Word Ministries, Church of God in Christ. Service has already started. And I'll see you all tomorrow for Markup Monday. Have a super Sunday. Bye-bye.